Fears of early childhood rejection crept in and fed on a newfound fear of rejection again. Suddenly, I was thrown back to that small town in rural Indiana, where everybody knows the goings-on of everyone else, especially the latest news of the arrest of my dad for public intoxication. How ironic that I spent my formative years cowering from him, and now with the memory of the smell of his alcohol burning in my nostrils, he was present in my last thought before completing my journey. As I crossed the Sea of Japan, a spirit unbroken, the two sides of love were very much present, one sitting beside me and one whispering in the dark closet of my mind. This next read is a little bit hard for me to read, and you'll see why. Keep in mind, again, I'm Amy, but I'm going to set the table and let you know that this is my childhood, which was very frightening for me. My dad was trying to take my dignity away from me, and he used tactics that he had adopted from his army training in order to break down, well, just to break us all down. The purpose was to break down normal human patterns of independence and act only on the orders of a superior, him. By using a combination of sleep deprivation with the threat of bodily harm, it became a very effective tool. I watched Daddy through my steaming tears. I was afraid, but I was determined not to show him anymore. He raised his muscular arm slowly. I counted the seconds with each pounding of my heart. Then, in a flashy blur, the hunk of ivory and silver came hurling at me again. This time I jumped in the air with a blood-curdling scream just as the knife landed where my left foot had been. I rolled over backwards in a dead fear. Scrambling to save my feet, I turned to run down the darkened hallway. Late that night, when I could hear loud snoring coming from the bedroom, I crept along the cold linoleum floor holding my breath. It was scary dark, but I inched along more determined than any 4-year-old would be, because I had to steal that knife. My plan was simple. I was going to get that knife. I had to protect my mommy, my sister, and my brother. And there, half under the bed, was Daddy's crumpled, smelly pants. I groped the musty jeans in the dark for the knife. There it is. I felt the cold handle in the right pocket. I got it. Grabbing the knife ever so gently, I slipped out of the bedroom. I continued my exit, crawling halfway down the hallway, for fear the sound of my bare feet running would wake the monster in Daddy again. I pattered into the kitchen and with a stroke of ingenuity, slid the knife under the refrigerator, then reached up and placed it forever on a rusty metal edge underneath. We'll be safe now. I jumped up and scampered to my bed before anyone could catch me, but I was haunted by one last thought as I pulled the tattered covers over my head. Safe until the next time. I remember as a child praying many, many times, God, please don't let there be a next time. I'm not used to this.
What I want you to take note of is that as a very small child, Alice found herself having to pray to God for help. This in itself is both a tragedy and a miracle. A tragedy not because she had to pray to God, but because she had to pray for help. Parents, never underestimate the need for your children to learn how to pray. And lead by example. Remember that old adage, what is taught is caught. Alice's story is a tragic story of a child learning to pray on her own. Those terrible ways she can pray. Afraid. But I also mentioned it's a miracle as well because, as she mentioned, her mother was not only a practicing Buddhist, but a Buddhist teacher. So in her early years, she had absolutely zero Christian influence in her life from either mother or father. Yet, instinctively, she found a corner in her heart for God and depended on it, lived on it, crawled in it, and survived. And then the miracle continues when her mom finally turned to Christianity at the fear of losing her entire Japanese family for rejecting Buddha. But she was led to Christ by another church, not unlike this one, where as you have, they did to her. They opened their doors, they opened their arms, and they welcomed her in, just like you have for us today. And before I forget my manners, I sincerely want to say thank you.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk about some nice things now. Shortly after moving to North Carolina, God brought to me a little Japanese woman named Keiko. She's a masseuse here in town. I don't know if you know her, but she was very determined in helping me locate my family in Japan. Then became a series of mysterious events directing God's plan for me. My first astounding miracle occurred as she shuffled through my old shoebox of yellow tattered letters, phone numbers, and addresses that I had recovered in my mother's closet once she had passed. All of a sudden, she was without words. Her eyes were big as saucers. It would seem like forever before she finally told me what she had discovered about my family in Japan. She shook her head. You don't understand. This is my neighborhood. I know right where this store is. Do you understand how astronomical that is? That almost billions of people, she knew where that neighborhood was. As our lives began to fall in place, God began arranging our busy schedule. And for the first time in many years of bringing business, He landed a Japanese account. Imagine that. It was going to require us to fly, or him to fly to Japan. And yeah, us, because he was going to take me or plan his funeral. And you see, he's still alive. But anyway, after arriving in the land of earthquakes, we were surprised to find out that there had not been an earthquake in Japan for 50 years in that region since my mom had left 50 years ago. Rick said it was welcoming me home, but at the time I didn't believe it until a couple days later after the earthquake, there was an aftershock when I'm at the top of an 8-story cement building. And this building is doing this. And I'm thinking, why did He bring me all the way here to kill me? So I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be there. So I took a deep breath and I said, I'm going to go call my nurse. I'm going to go make a cup of tea. So I go rifling through the food pantry of cans that have chicken scratches on it for words. And I eventually find a ceramic container in the back of the cupboard that looked like tea bags. I dropped that container when I read what was on it. On each little bag that looked like tea bags but ended up being sugar bags was printed in big black bold letters, ALICE, my name. In Fukuoka, Japan, I saw my name. We never saw English words in Japan. The next story kind of gives you another idea of why I really believe this is a sign from God. And that this was important to me, that I knew that He was with me, because I had to get the strength to pass my mother's Japanese Bible over to my family, knowing that I could be cut away from my family as my mother was. This Bible came from a small Baptist church. Can I say Baptist in a Methodist church? Thank you. Okay. Let's use that. Anyway, my mother, as he had said, was ostracized because she was a Buddhist teacher, and she was called a traitor for turning against the Buddha God. And I had a really strong fear that maybe my family would turn me away as well. But when I saw that sign with my name on it, I knew I was supposed to be there, as I think you all would too.